Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Real Talk. We are here with friend of the show, probably being the show. Michael Jordan is
You
back.
got upgraded from
Yeah, yeah,
Yay!
yeah. So sooner or later, he's going to be the whole show. But this episode, we are going to talk about a suggestion that Michael Jordan made, which is the film Queer, that is starring Daniel Craig, the second film this year to be directed by Luca Guadagnino after Challengers. And Mike, do you want to, Lydian, do you want to say hi to everybody?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. Happy New Year. We're going to have a lot of good episodes this year, I hope. So please subscribe if you haven't already. With that, I'll pass it to Mike to.
I will just say Happy Chinese New Year because the
Oh
Happy
my
New Year
God.
cutoff is ended.
Okay,
We're in
whatever.
Chinese New Year
Okay,
now.
happy
Really
New
agree.
Year.
Okay. All right, Mike, how are you? How?
Cool.
Yeah.
I'm good, man. I just rewatched. So I saw Queer last fall at the London Film Festival. Um, we'll get into everyone's thoughts on the film, but
Also talk about what that was like to see it premiere and
it
what the
was
film
really
festival was like. Yeah.
it was really cool. I enjoyed the London Film Festival. I don't think it was the premiere, but it was like one of the really early screenings, and it
Okay.
was in like the main festival hall. So it was in not just a movie theater or a big movie theater, but it was in this like really huge space that seated like thousands of
Okay.
people, not just like 100. Luca was there. He gave a little introduction,
Wow.
which was cool. And then
What
it
was
was kind of fun to watch it with like just a bunch of like everybody there was a film nerd, right? Like that's the only reason you would go to this. And there was a bit of a red carpet beforehand, so it all felt like a big event, and it was cool to watch it with people who were into it.
Do you remember what his introduction was about, or he just was like, thanks for being here?
I don't remember that much. I remember he was a little cheeky. He was a little excited about like the ayahuasca scene. He was like,
Okay.
we'll get into that. We'll get into that. But he was, he was clearly excited about it. But honestly, I don't remember that much about what he said.
no. Okay.
Cool. So let me give you, I'll just do a little intro on like the film, like what is this movie, and a little bit about the book it's based on. So yeah, like Anna mentioned, Queer is a 2024 film directed by Luca Guadagnino, I think is how you pronounce it, who directed Call Me by Your Name and Challengers. The screenplay is by Justin Kuritzkis. This is only his second screenplay. I think the only other one was
Just
Challengers. So
challenges. Yeah.
yes, the
Mhm.
new screenwriter. It's based on the 1985 novella by William Burroughs, set in 1950s Mexico City. The film follows an outcast American expat named William Lee, played by Daniel Craig, who becomes infatuated with Gene Allerton, a much younger man, played by Drew Starkey. Lee abuses alcohol and drugs, is addicted to heroin, and is closed off, seemingly having few friends or relations. Allerton tolerates Lee's sexual advances, but it is unclear whether he himself is gay. Lee invites Allerton on a trip to South America where they go in search of ahe, a drug that supposedly facilitates telepathy. And then their relationship comes to a head. And Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross compose the score. Like I mentioned, it's based on the novella by William Burroughs. William Burroughs was born into a wealthy family in St. Louis. Interestingly, his grandfather founded a corporation that was really influential in early computing. So he's from a rich family.
Yeah.
He attended college, served in World War II. Afterwards, he became a heroin addict, and that pushed him to live outside the U.S. And he actually lived in Mexico City, Tangiers, and other places. His work is often experimental and autobiographical. He's
Yeah.
particularly known for his novels Junkie and Naked Lunch.
Yeah.
Queer was originally written at the same time as Junkie, which was his first novel. Junkie was published in 1953. But when the publisher requested that he expand the text, he kind of ransacked Queer and put that into Junkie. And then Queer didn't come out until 1985. So,
Oh, that makes sense. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
so that is, so that's Queer. That's William Burroughs. So what did you guys think? Was this a good movie? Did you like it? Did you dislike it?
So Anand and I watched it together recently, and I think I appreciated it maybe on an artistic level, but it was hard for me to connect to any takeaways or plot. And I could sense similar frustrations from Anand because he was on the couch across from me. What did you think?
Okay, I'm going to try really hard not to be a hater here. And I think my main the thing I really want to achieve in this podcast is not to figure out queer or why it's a good film or that. It's just the broader aspect of this kind of a story or a film of someone who is like a wanderer that's suffering and the romanticization of that, and I've never really understood like why, who cares about these people? Like particularly like another film I really don't like is Into the Wild, where this guy from a very wealthy family who's very well-to-do ensconces the world and is suffering in the wilderness. I don't know, maybe that's not the takeaway for Into the Wild, but if I were to summarize my takeaway from Queer, we have, let's face it, a very tragic but like pathetic like guy who I wouldn't even want to call it unrequited love. It's sort of like, is a guy named Allerton? Is that his? It's sort of like Allerton is like a picture painting that he becomes so obsessed with on a very superficial level that he clings onto this to the end of his life. And this is the part which I think is pernicious, is that the film is trying to tell us that we should be moved by this and feel bad for him. And
it is trying, it could just be observational.
I mean, the very ending scene with the legs thing, it's sort of like calling out to you to say, look at this poor man, you know? And I'm like, I'm really, I don't want to be like so hard on him because like, it's not my place to be. I'm sure many people face this kind of a situation and it's bad and things like that. And I'm not opposed to films that are like plotless and meandering and it's just a character study. That's fine. But I just needed more reasons to care. Like, what is his art about? Like, I understand, but everything I have to get from this film is based on Burroughs' life that I have to fill in the pieces.
That's
you know what
exactly
I mean?
right.
Yeah. Why is he suffering in Mexico City? Why is he drinking all the time? Because he was persecuted in America. Is he feeling things of shame and insecurity? I have to add in all these things, and the film isn't giving me none of that. And then I need to firmly believe these things. You know what I mean? It's sort of like.
But maybe just in case folks haven't seen it yet, because we'll do like a spoiler, like we'll spoil it pretty quick. But if we do try to describe what happens in the movie, how would you guys go about, like Mike, how would you like summarize?
Yeah, I would say you're totally right. This is not a plot heavy movie. It's not a particularly like narrative movie. There is a story and there is a narrative, but the whole thing to me comes across a lot more as like a mood piece or like a stylistic piece. And I think there are some themes. I think some of the themes are kind of interesting and I like them. And I think it is a story that touched me in the end, but like, you're totally right. This is not, it's a very slight story. And actually like the novella it's based on is 119 pages in the edition I have. And there's some generous white space in there. So like you could probably read the novella in the time it takes to watch the movie. I think the movie's like 215 or something like that.
But but to like fill in that, like what happens in the movie is you basically follow the main character go from like bar to bar and drink all day, and not even at the very, I guess there was that one scene where you could have noticed that he was addicted to drugs, but I didn't notice that. It just looked like a tableau
scene.
So I didn't pick up on that. So I didn't even know he was an addict till like the later third of the movie. He has this obsession with Allerton. He tries to pick up various men. Then he goes on that trip, like you said in your opening, and then he goes on an ayahuasca experience. Okay, so basically you did already summarize it. Yeah, that is really all.
That's honestly that's about it. I mean, I think the main like narrative conflict or mystery, such as there is in it, is will this? I agree with you, by the way. I don't think this is a romantic movie or a love movie exactly. I think it's a movie about like desire and obsession. And like the main dramatic tension is, will his obsession be returned by this guy? Is this guy actually himself gay or bisexual or whatever, or is he using him, or like, how does this relationship come to it? Like, but that's it. It's a very, very simple story.
Well, it kind of seems to me like just very superficial lust, because he clearly is not want for sex. He's getting lots of sex in Mexico City, but there's just something about how hot and beautiful Allerton is. And it's so mesmerizing to him that he eschews everything and tries to convince himself that he is in search of some particular connection with Allerton. But Allerton, like my favorite scene is the kebab scene, because Allerton says zero things in that scene, and he just keeps talking at him throughout the whole scene. That to me was like a metaphor for the whole movie. It's it was just so pathetic.
No, totally. I think this is like.
Well, I was just going to say, I don't know if we do want to touch on the novella, but I feel like what I was saying to Mike earlier before we started recording is when I read the introduction by William S. Burroughs explaining why he wrote Queer, there were like 2 or 3 really interesting themes and ideas that now make the movie make sense. But
Yeah.
it can't be a good film if you have to read the introduction by the author about the text that it's based on. You know what I mean? So I don't know if we want to cover that ground, but like there are answers from Burroughs to Anand's questions, but they should have been in the movie.
Yeah.
Well,
Not in the
let me ask my next question then, which is, so I think we established, I do think this is a good movie, but with some major flaws. You guys didn't like it. So my next question is, what is this movie about? Like thematic, like what is the theme of the movie?
I think, okay, I'll one takeaway I had from the film, which probably is not what it intended to. I think there's a strong Nirvana connection to William S. Burroughs. He made a song with Nirvana, and there's "Come As You Are" playing in the beginning. There's a lot of Nirvana soundtracks in this film. And I remember distinctly that Kurt Cobain suffered from a very bad stomach ache or stomach problem, and he tried to like go to loads of doctors to like fix it, but he just kept medicating it with heroin. And then I think he was like offered some surgery or something, but he refused it because he thought that pain really helped his art. And I think, in a sense, that's what Allerton is to Daniel Craig's character or Lee's character, the Lee character. It's like he's just clinging on to this pain and thing that he will drag till the end of his life. And I don't know, I'm taking away that that's some sort of fulfillment that he gets from this long forlorn love that kind of defines him in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I was thinking that it could be about some deep unresolved trauma, but I didn't really get that because like Anand said earlier, I don't feel that we were given enough details as to what this man has actually been through or experienced. There's like a few kind of weird scenes where you sense, like he talks about not being embodied. He talks about queer and how that, like obviously he has some sort of like dysmorphia or like some not feeling like his full self, his full realized self. And that's definitely tied to also being gay, but it's very like conceptual. Like I can pick up on it because the words were said, and obviously these are like the bare bones of what happens, but I didn't feel it. I didn't see it like build and grow or be resolved or really understand how that was playing out. But I feel like I kept looking for like evidence or like signs for like, oh, and not that it has to be like so neat, like, oh, I was abused as a kid, so now I'm like this.
Yeah.
But just like literally anything.
Yes.
Like just like Anand said, like what is he struggling to be a writer? Is he withdrawing from opiates, which kind of happens later on? Like, does he really feel like so much emptiness inside? Sure, but like why? And like where does that come from? What is the statement on that? I feel like that I really struggled with.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mike?
To me, I think this is a movie about and a book about pain, self-destruction, and desire. You know, because like this is like you're right. Clearly, this is a man. We don't go much into his backstory at all in the movie or the book, and like what caused all this pain. But clearly, this is a man behaving incredibly self-destructively. He's just like wandering from bar to bar, drinking, not even enjoying his drinks, just like gulping down tequila after tequila.
Thanks so much.
He's abusing drugs. He doesn't seem to really have any friends or relations, right? Like he has a couple. He has, Jason Schwartzman's kind of a buddy. Yeah, but aside from that, even like in these bars he's going to, the other like guys don't seem that into him. They don't seem like that close.
Doesn't have community.
He doesn't have community. He lives alone. He's clearly in some kind of deep pain. And then he is, salving that pain with drugs, with heroin, with alcohol. And then through this weird relationship with this guy who, like, dude, you're totally right. Like, he doesn't even know this guy, psychologically or emotionally. He just desires him. It's just it's like another fix for him. And he does all these like long monologues at the guy. Where the interesting thing to me about the character kind of is like this, he's so obviously like closed off and seeking to connect to other people. And he's not uncharming. Like he does these monologues that are kind of funny or interesting, but it's almost like he hides how closed off he is behind like the erudition of these monologues he gives. So I thought that was kind of interesting, but it's like, to me, that's what the movie about is, like this guy's pain and suffering and how he's salving that with whether it's with like desire or drugs.
I will say one thing that did make it more personally resonant to me is I have begun to, in the past few years, identify as an expat because I'm an American living in Singapore. And so this movie is about an American living in Mexico in like the 50s, right? And so I did find it interesting. I mean, no takeaways, nothing like mind-blowing, but it was cool to, as a mood piece, to see what it was like to be an American that just drinks all day and has sex in these like, you know, gay clubs and stuff. And because things are so cheap and because he can get his heroin easily, like he really is living like a bum expat lifestyle, which, you know, I've come across my fair share of bum expats like in China and in Singapore. And so it's kind of cool to see it like more romanticized and in the 50s and like wearing the white linen suit with the hat. And, like,
I love that.
Like,
I love the aesthetic of like his clothes and his little items and stuff. I liked all that.
Still a bum expat, but he's like, you know, downing mezcal and has a linen suit. So it's like, oh, okay, that's like kind of cool to look at, but not for 2.5 hours or 2 hours.
Totally. Yeah. And as an expat too, I like that aspect too of just like seeing this, but it all, you know, bit of a cautionary tale. I don't want to be a bum like wandering around getting smashed all day.
You're not anywhere close.
But having said that, I don't know what your guys' take is on this. I think this is like a grave or a misery of his own making. Because actually, the community there is very vibrant and they're very friendly. And it seems like actually paradise if I was gay in the 50s and I was. It's Mexico City. Everybody is having a good time. I think he kind of thinks he's better than everyone else. That was my take of it. And then there's someone that's better than him, this hot Allerton guy. So he's stuck in between these two worlds. And that's why there's resentment from everybody else against him because they're like, what, are we not good enough for you? Or something? I don't know if you got that take.
No, I totally agree. And this is, there are a few just little details I think the film does and the book does too that show how isolated this guy is. And this is one of the ones I noticed was like, if you look at where he's going, where he's drinking and eating in Mexico, he's never eating in any Mexican restaurant, right? Correct. He goes to like the American restaurant and eats steak and baked Alaska, you know?
But that's the classic expat. I love that. I mean, I don't think it was meant as like a dig at expats, but I took it as one and I liked it.
Totally, or like a couple of times he says some derogatory stuff about like Mexican people. So just to me that was like another. It's like he's alienated from his country. He's alienated from other people, and then he's not even trying to like learn about where he is now. To me, it's just another layer of isolation. But okay, on follow-up question on like the theme thing, which I had was, do you guys think this is a movie about the queer experience?
Yeah, not really.
No.
I feel like in that
maybe
the Daniel Craig experience.
I feel like that's an expectation thing is like I had the wrong expectation. I came in wanting to like kind of have a movie about the queer experience, which I feel like is not wild given it's called Queer. But I would say Daniel Craig but more specifically it's William S. Burroughs' projection. Like it's literally him. And now having read the novella and read like his introduction that he wrote about his novella, it's like so clearly like informed by his neuroses and the things that he went through. But like to expand on your point, the parts where you do, maybe that's the problem is having that wrong expectation because there are parts in the movie where you're kind of like, oh, like is Allerton queer or not? Like, are we exploring what it means to like accept yourself as gay or like stay in the closet? And like even the main character, he also is obviously gay and like goes to these clubs and hangs out with these people, but then also like has weird hang-ups about it as well. So there's parts in the film where I'm like, oh, are we gonna like kind of explore more what this queerness means or what this gay experience is? And I don't feel like we do. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I'll tell you who has the ultimate queer experience is Jason Schwartzman. He is having the queer experience of his life.
I totally agree. I don't think, and actually, because we both read like the book and the introduction and everything, and Burroughs himself said this isn't really a movie about being gay or a book about being gay. And I agree. It's I think I think audiences going to see this today would have that expectation that this is going to be, or like if you just say like, oh, this is a movie about a gay drug addict in the 50s, you would just naturally assume it would be some kind of exploration of, well, What oppression does he face? How does that influence his queerness?
Yeah.
What is the nature of this? How he's medicating himself because he's discriminated against, yada yada yada. And this movie is not really
Yeah.
about that at all.
That's
I think
definitely like the expectation of the modern viewer. I feel like you summed it up really well. Keep going. I cut
But
you off.
that is a subtext that we're expected to presume that left fills in the gap that explains a lot of his
No, because
behavior.
if I was a William S. Burroughs fan
Yeah.
and I knew his work, I knew his life, and I'd read this
Oh,
novel,
then everything
I
makes
would have
sense.
loved this movie.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't have gone in with the expectation of it being about the queer experience, and I wouldn't expect any commentary or enlightenment around that.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think I would be very satisfied because the themes that he's going for in the novella are like very religiously displayed on screen by Luca Guadagnino. Like it's like the exact dialogue, like
In
the
fact,
exact
Totally.
That's-
If you haven't read the novella, it's like it's really faithful to it. Like
I don't
almost
know.
line to
Well,
line.
yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you. Can you talk a bit about the differences between the novella?
Yeah, it's some of a really key part of the novella and the movie. There's more in the novella, but somewhat in the movie is Daniel Craig's or the lead character's like erudite, humorous monologues he gives.
Right.
And so like some of that dialogue in the movie, I'm pretty sure is just straight from the book. Like there are definitely
Yeah.
lines I recognized. There's not much that's changed plot wise. There are a few sequences in the book that got cut out, and the end sequence, which we can maybe talk about later, but the Ahe sequence is pretty different from the book. But other than that, it's actually like incredibly faithful.
Yeah,
Okay.
and I do want to share with you guys and the viewers the introduction that William S. Burroughs wrote to the novella, because the things that frustrated me the most about the book, I feel like are explained in the introduction. So what really annoyed me was like all the desire without yearning, just like the sex, but I'm not understanding where it's coming from. And I think another thing that annoyed me was Allerton just being like a kind of object with no, like kind of just there and like not really, it wasn't really about their relationship, I feel like, and that I found frustrating. But then when you read the intro to the novel, William S. Burroughs is like, this book is about what it's like to be in withdrawal from narcotics. And let me tell you what happens when you're in withdrawal from narcotics. Narcotics numb you and repress all of your sexual desires. So as you're coming off of them, you just want to have sex with anyone and everyone. And I'm like, okay, this was like a defining feature of that experience. That's why it was in the book. The second thing he says is that when you are going through withdrawal, you feel the disintegration of yourself. And you start to like freak out because you don't know who you are. And one way that Burroughs copes with it is to assume a character delivering monologues to an audience. And he even says it doesn't matter who the audience is, you just need to have someone there. And it's so important to you to have someone there to listen to you monologue.
Yeah.
And so then I'm like, okay, like, yeah, that was Allerton. This makes perfect sense now.
Yeah.
The third thing he says in the intro is to Mike's point, this is a movie about pain. What pain? Like, what did he go through that is causing so much pain? Well, according to Burroughs, he accidentally killed his wife, which Anand found out by Googling after, by putting a glass on her head and being like, I can shoot it, but he missed and like shot her. Well, it was disputed if that really happened.
Yeah. He said something else at another time, but yeah.
But Burroughs is like, this whole book is about the pain he feels from the death of his wife. That's not even in the movie at all. And so I feel like now that I've read the intro, okay, I'm like, that's why I think if I were a fan of Burroughs, I would love this movie. But if you have to have all that context, I feel like then the movie doesn't make sense. But what do you think?
Can I ask a really dumb question? Like, why are people fans of Burroughs? Like, what is the appeal? Is it because he was just drugged up and he's led a dangerous, interesting life? Is that what's
probably just? I think there's a little bit of that cult of like, ooh, the bad boy, drug addict, whatever, which I don't care about. But I don't know. So I haven't read that much Burroughs. I think I read Naked Lunch like a million years ago. I don't remember anything about it. So I did. So I read for this. I read Queer, and I also read Junkie, his first novel, which was kind of the hit, sort of made him as a writer. I will say I like them both a decent amount. Junkie especially was really good. It's written in this kind of it's about a heroin. It's the same thing. It's the same like stand-in character, and it's about a heroin addict and his experiences. And it's kind of the same thing in that there's not much plot. There's a bit of a progression, but not much like plot per se. But it's written in this style that's like very very harsh, very brutal, and almost like reporting almost. And it's written in the first person, but this guy just goes out and has these like crazy encounters.
Okay.
And it's sort of semi-psychedelic, like he's got some interesting psychedelic passages.
Okay.
But it has the same thing where like just like Queer isn't really interested in like uh exploring like the nature of this character's psychology beyond like the fact of his pain. In Junkie, we don't get anything about like why is this person a heroin addict, yada yada yada. Like these aren't novels that are interested in it says it like they are interested in the character's psychology to some degree, but they're not interested in like unpacking it in a deep way.
Yeah, explaining it. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, and that to me makes it. I wouldn't say I'm like a gigantic Burroughs fan, but I did like both of them. And that to me, it's an interesting other. It's very much not how we think about stories today, but I think it's an interesting approach.
So
I can vibe with that, but I think I still get hung up on it being mostly written by like rich white guys, and like
Yeah.
it's cool as a movement, and I think it's cool to move away from the narrative. But I just don't think it's my cup of tea. But I will share that Burroughs said that he felt like he wrote Junkie, but Queer wrote him. So I feel like Junkie was definitely the one that like got the success and was like more an intended effort, and then Queer kind of like bled out from it.
I just want to say one thing that really does irk me is this romanticization of men killing their wives, especially like authors.
Yeah.
Like Norman Mailer stabbed his wife. Ooh,
I
Burroughs
totally
killed
agree.
Cliff Booth, in Once Upon a Time, or did he not? I heard,
I totally agree. Just be clear, I don't know that much about William Burroughs' life. I read a little bit in preparation for this, but he doesn't seem like a good guy. I don't think anyone should like emulate this guy.
But he basically is an expat in Mexico because he has this junk habit, and you can live in Mexico, according to him, off $2 a day. So like he is, it's cool to like get a glimpse into what that experience is like. But I don't, feel like there's anything to emulate.
My favorite thing was like, I think an hour into the movie, she was like, I need to see him write something. Like, he's just been drinking. I need to see him type. Just type for 2 seconds.
He's supposed to be a writer. So I need one.
Yeah, it has nothing to do. Yeah. The other thing I'll say is the interesting thing about Junkie too is it wasn't published by like a literary publishing house. It was published by like a pulp sensationalist novel writing house. So there is something about these first couple of Burroughs novels where they're kind of intended to function commercially as like sensationalism for like 1950s middle America, to be like
journalistic like dispatches from this like crazy land that you cannot connect
Is
to.
the sex in the book as graphic as the film? Like, does it describe everything, or
not that I recall? But
I
there is
think
a lot of
that's
sex.
Guadagnino's, like if you've seen Challenger into the.
So he doesn't describe any of the sexual encounters he has with Allerton or with the random people or anything? Like,
I can't recall that there are a few sexually explicit passages in the book. I can't recall how explicit though. There's some, by the way, like there's one series towards the end where the lead character is fantasizing about like 13-year-old boys and stuff like it's like obviously they cut that out of it from the movie. But in terms like I can't remember. I don't recall it being like all that graphic. Yeah. All right. Let me see what other questions I had. Okay, what is the movie about? We kind of just covered this, but like Lee has a penchant for storytelling and delivering long, humorous, dramatic monologues. What do these monologues reveal about his character? How does he use stories? We kind of just talked about this, but
he's just throwing everything at the wall to try and get something from Allerton. That's what I thought it was. He was just like, he literally did a little bow dance thing to Allerton. Like he was literally showing off his plumage and peacock. It's like, this is what I got. And yeah, I think beyond that, I wanted to like bring it a little further to the where's in Ecuador did they go? Quito? Like the Quito sequence. And from my perspective, that whole thing was based on just control, where he was like trying to control him and commandeer with the cash, like, oh, I'll pay you and blah blah blah.
Yeah.
And
I feel like he was so I mean, I'm obviously influenced now that I read the thing, but I feel like he just couldn't be by himself. Like he was experiencing the disintegration of his self. So he needed like one person, obviously someone, yeah, that he could control and pay for their flight and stuff, to always be there. And that's why he was so needy, which was like such a turn off. He was
Yeah.
like really, yeah, it was not yearning desire. It was like, I need you so I don't have a psychological break, is the vibe I
Yeah.
got.
To me, it was just like speaks to like the pain and desperation of the character, because like it's absolutely it's like completely
It is
pathetic.
very pathetic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He doesn't at all come across as like, oh, I'm a cool, suave, rich guy. Let me.
Yeah.
It's like he's this desperate, sad, pathetic, friendless guy
Also,
throwing money
age,
at
like,
this.
he should have more things going for him. I don't know what age he's supposed to be, but he should be more established, I feel like, than he is shown to be.
But yeah, I
Yeah.
want to say, like, I think Daniel Craig did a fantastic performance. It was a really great performance, but there's just something about him. It's just maybe it's the James Bond baggage. I just think he's too like he's Daniel Craig, you know. I can't take him as this pathetic guy. But I guess in the moment, yes, it's believable. At the back of my head, I'm like, look at Daniel Craig. How is he having trouble finding,
Yeah,
a guy to go to bed with in Mexico City? Like, how is that? I don't know. Maybe this is just a me thing, but I'm like,
Yeah. Well, what did you guys like? What did you guys think of the Daniel Craig performance?
I don't think I had the James Bond baggage. Yeah, I mean, I had a very visceral reaction where I was just like, you look grody AF, you look unwashed. I mean, obviously, this is like meant to say something about you as a character not giving a shit, but like, I don't know. I think I had the same reaction as Anand, where I just don't love like following a bum for 2 hours. Like, in the way the acting was fantastic because he really sold being a bum. I guess I didn't have like the James Bond baggage in that regard. And I do feel like he tried to display a wide range of emotion and internal pain. So I saw it, but I couldn't really like latch onto it again because I wasn't really sure where it was coming from. And I also like the guy who played Allerton. I feel like he was able to convey a lot by not doing much. I don't
Yeah.
know which actor that was.
Yeah.
And then I also
His
maybe at
name
some
is
point,
Drew Starkey.
Sparsky or something. Yeah.
and then at
Starkey,
some
yeah.
point it'd be cool to talk about the women in the film. I guess it's only one. Well, in the novella, the doctor's a guy, so I think they just
Yeah.
made her a lady for the film, which is whatever. But the friend of Allerton is interesting because she comes back in Daniel Craig's kind of like, he has this like vision or like this nightmare where she's like cut off at the legs and he like molests her and she has like a heroin. So I don't know if we're gonna get to that, but
That is white.
oh,
That's what I thought of it.
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Allerton's friend, right? Or what's
Yeah,
I thought it was Allison's friend too, but I don't know for sure.
I want to give this film a special compliment because I was very excited to watch this film because I love Mexico City. I like the aesthetics of it. And then I was really, really annoyed while watching it that it doesn't look at all like Mexico City, or it looks very, very placid version of it.
Why is that?
Dude,
Why would you do that?
100%. So this is one of the things I wanted to bring up. Is just like generally talking about the production design,
Yeah.
but my specific beef is that I think this movie is very much about a certain place and time, and so
Yes,
sense of
yes.
place is really important.
Yeah.
And it drives me, and same as you, like we went to Mexico
Yeah.
City, we had a good time. I really like Mexico City.
They went
I was
together.
excited to see something like, why not? So I was really, really disappointed to see that they filmed this on sound stages in Rome instead
In
of like
London.
in
Oh,
Mexico.
Rome, right?
But you can tell. I don't even have to know anything about production to know that's a soundstage. Like,
Yes.
it's so
Totally.
unrealistic.
Having said that, I was going to say, give
Yeah,
it a
what's the
compliment.
compliment?
The compliment is that it did sort of feel like this is not Mexico City. This is a recollection of Mexico City. It's too clean. It's everything is different, and it reminded me of Eyes Wide Shut because like Stanley Kubrick had a very like bad flying phobia, so he never flew anywhere outside of London. So he recreated New York City in like a London soundstage. But so everyone was criticizing that it doesn't look like New York City, but it's not supposed to look like New York City because it's a dream.
Okay.
It's a dream sequence. It's what you think New York City is. It's not really your wife. It's what you think your wife is. You know, it's like one of those kind of things.
Yeah.
Everybody in Queer was kind of sweaty all the time, which I really liked. There was like a little glisten, and everything is like drug haze or some kind of feeling. So in retrospect, like if that was what they were going for, I thought that was pretty cool. So I don't know.
What do you guys think about like totally it doesn't really look like Mexico City at all. It looks very I don't know. It looks very Hollywood fakey, but in a way that's kind of intentional and old school. Maybe like there's a lot of model work,
Yeah.
like
I feel
the
like I would
plane
be
that they
so
flew in.
disappointed if it was. Sorry to cut you off. I feel like I'd be so disappointed in Luca as a director if it wasn't intentional. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna go with assuming it was intentional,
Yes.
but continue.
Yeah.
Yeah, like or even like you like obviously a lot of the backdrops were like painted rather than
Yes.
shot. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But I kind of liked it because it was it. I don't get me wrong. I wish they had shot this in some actual like old neighborhoods in Mexico City.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought it was kind of beautiful, like old school movie work. He said actually this is his tribute to Powell and Pressburger.
Yeah, the
Um,
red shoes. I still to this day I don't get what he was trying to talk about. Like because I've seen the red shoes many times. It's one of my favorite films, and that's a film about like sacrificing for your art or dying for your art. I don't
Yeah.
understand the parallels. Someone needs to sit down and
No, he doesn't. Yeah, no.
yeah.
No. But this,
I
I
don't.
don't
I
know.
don't.
Go
What was
ahead.
that? I don't even know who Powell and Pressburger are, so I was wondering if you guys could unpack
Really,
that at all.
really great. I really would recommend a lot of really great films. I would recommend Black Narcissus, which is an erotic thriller film about nuns in the Himalayan mountains post World War II. It's amazing. It's fantastic. But The Red Shoes is very good, and I would also recommend The Life and Death of Colonel Blimp and A Stairway to Heaven. Sorry, that's for the viewers who like Powell and Pressburger. They're very, very good.
But did they do this like kind of production style, or like how is this a tribute to them, or
Maybe the matte paintings. Powell and Pressburger did a lot of matte paintings, but other than that, I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm a big fan of Powell and Pressburger.
What I was gonna say is Anand mentioned this to me. I don't know if you want to bring it up, but like the soundtrack also not being what you expected to build the sound of place, the feel of place and time for Mexico. Do
A
you
lot
still
of
feel
people
that
are
way?
raving about the soundtrack, and I love Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. I don't know. It didn't. Maybe the film was just frustrating me that everything was frustrating me.
Yeah.
So maybe I need to rewatch this to feel.
But the
get the feel
music,
of
just
the
to
music.
explain, the music is just like 90s rock.
Yeah,
Isn't
it
it?
was
It's not,
anachronistic,
yeah, it's
right?
anachronistic.
Yeah.
Yep, totally. Yeah, that's one of my questions. What you guys thought about that? I liked it. I guess this maybe leads into my next question, but I think the reason it worked for me is I was enjoying because when I watched this at the film festival, I hadn't read a William Burroughs novel in like 15 years or whatever. And I like, I'm not like a huge William Burroughs guy.
Yeah.
I didn't know any about the backstory or anything, but I think on my first viewing, I was just enjoying it aesthetically and just as like a mood piece. Like
Yeah.
I liked like the color palette, I liked the shots, I liked
Yeah.
like the objects,
Yeah.
looked cool. I liked the framing of things, and then I just like 90s rock music, so
pretty
so anyway.
Yeah, no,
So
but I want to say I really agree with you. And I think the reason why that effect, whatever, like the pretty effect, didn't work for me is just the content. Like, I feel like if it was a woman doing, honestly, maybe if it was just a woman and that would have been enough. But like, if it had just been a woman, like maybe doing something else, then maybe I would love it. But I feel like none of it, like so I think it's very valid what you're saying. Like I can think about my experience watching other movies that also didn't really have much of a plot or much of a narrative hook or like emotional beats, but because I could relate to either the character or like what was happening and it was pretty, then I was like, okay, this is a good movie. So I feel like that's very valid.
I would say I really love the fashion. I think the fashion
Yeah.
was really everything
Yep.
was wearing was on point. The
Yeah.
sunglasses, the
But
fedora,
it's the same outfits
the
over and
linen.
over.
I do it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna buy a linen suit. I want to go to Cuba or something.
do the
do
same
that.
thing. I was like, that looks awesome.
You should.
This is a funny place to take it, maybe, but I think one of the reasons it did work for me on first viewing and it kind of hit for me was, like we've already talked about it. It doesn't really have much plot. A lot of it is just kind of stylistically nice, but not there is a plot, but not that much. But I think I've been getting in the last like year or so more open to movies that are aesthetically interesting and not plot driven. Like I've been watching a lot more Wong Kar-wai's,
Yes.
and I my initial my first Wong Kar-wai I saw was In the Mood for Love, which I
Yeah.
liked but didn't totally hit for me.
Yeah.
And then I watched another one and I was like I can appreciate the artistry, I can appreciate it, but I'm not sure I'm into it. And then I watched a few more and it's like my brain stopped expecting a plot that made sense.
Yes. Yeah.
That's
And
the
I
thing.
just wanted to see the cool shots and the wacky stuff he came up with. And I've just been getting more and more open into movies that are like to movies that are just stylistically cool and not plot driven.
Yeah.
So,
Mike, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's like all about expectation. Like
Yes.
everything in life, everything in film or art, like if you it's really hard to go in without expectations. But if you go in expecting a plot and there's no plot, even subconsciously, like, none of us are trying to dictate what it's going to be. But I feel like what you described is spot on. Like if I know this is going to be vibes, then I'm a lot more open to appreciating
But
it.
I don't need a plot. I'm very happy for
Yeah.
aesthetics, but it was too repetitive. It was
I think it
literally
was-
the same
I think it was too
locations,
long.
the
It was
same
too long.
drinking,
yeah,
a different place, same location.
We
same
need to
thing.
talk about the last third of the movie because
yeah. Let's talk about that for sure.
to me, like what he said for maybe the first 2/3, then they go on this trip and then he's
Yeah.
trying to discover Yahe in the jungle. So Mike, go ahead.
Also, I would
Or-
need, Mike, could you also talk about telepathy? Like, what's the telepathy
Oh,
thing? Was
yeah,
there
yeah,
anything to talk about that?
So let
Is
me
it I
just,
want to read Alex's mind? Is that the idea?
I think so. Yeah. So we've kind of been over the plot already, but then the last kind of third of this is they go on this search for Ahe, which is ayahuasca, and they go to the jungle and they find the scientist who's in the jungle, and she's a little, standoffish with them, and then they eventually get her to give them the Ahe. They have a trip, and then the movie kind of ends, right? Or it ends, and then there's an epilogue where he comes back to Mexico City.
Yeah.
Yeah, that ends. Then he comes back to Mexico City, and you find out that nothing ever happened with him in Allerton, and he's sad about it. Yeah, this for me was the weakest section of the movie.
Yeah.
I agree. I think this movie plays a lot different and better if actually the whole thing was cut down by like 20 minutes.
It should have been like 90 minutes, I think that's fine.
Yeah, and the Ahe sequence for me is it goes on a bit long. It's got this funny like he's like they're like wandering around the jungle with machetes.
Yeah.
that was so
It becomes
different- that was
bizarre.
different
Yeah.
movie. That was like randomly a different movie.
Yeah, there's like a shitty CGI snake for some reason.
The snake.
Yeah.
The snake
You
was
know,
so
I forgot
I
about
didn't
that.
like it. But I think what's going on in the book and in the movie is, he's been using these drugs that numb him, right? He's been using like heroin mostly and alcohol. He's like numb his pain, and he's so obsessed with this Ahe because he thinks it's going to give him telepathy, and telepathy is all about literally putting your mind in another person's mind.
Yeah.
And
Wait a
actually, what's that?
Going towards psychedelics, I guess that would.
It is
Yeah. But it's about his desire for his because really what's going on with the character I think is he's so lonely and he's so deeply desirous for human connection, and here's a drug that will literally put his mind in someone else's. And even he goes to that like botanical garden and talks to the guy, and the guy even says to him like, why are you so interested? And he makes up some excuse, and then the guy says, telepathy, who are you trying to connect with? Your wife?
Yeah.
So I don't mind it, but I just think that sequence got a little silly and it was too long. And they
You know
should have
what
cut it
made me laugh was when Leslie Manville the next morning says like, "Oh, you guys really crossed the threshold, like you've reached nirvana or something." But in reality, she must have just saw a bunch of dudes just squirming like worms on the
Yeah. They were like this.
Like you guys did it.
I don't know. I feel like Luca should have taken more artistic licenses and made his own thing instead of being so faithful to the text, because there could have been something really cool about like what happens when you finally have your mind opened by ayahuasca. Like I know people who have gone to the desert and done ayahuasca and it's like healed their inner trauma or whatever, but I feel like maybe because he was being faithful to the text, there wasn't a lot that he could do or didn't choose to do. And part of me was like, oh, is he so obsessed with ayahuasca or Yahe because he wants to feel a connection to Allerton? And that really bothered me because nothing else in the movie supports the idea that he's seeking out connection. Like I just feel like that is not something that's fleshed out at all. So I feel like that would have been unnatural if that was why he wanted the drugs so much. So I hear you on like the reading that of him being lonely and wanting something where you could literally just, and maybe he doesn't realize that he's so numbed and divorced from his emotions. But yeah, definitely the execution as you guys are describing, like it was kind of silly. And like there is would you call that a dream sequence where they're just like morphing into each other and like naked?
I think that was the script. That was like to the point, like the connection thing, like they literally become connected. He like literally his hands are inside of him.
That's one thing where it kind of ruined my perception of Allerton. But let's talk about Allerton for a little bit because my perception of him, he's just a college kid, just come
Yeah.
out. He's in Mexico City, hanging out, doing some internship, just got out of the war or something, and like he's just having fun, just looking around. He doesn't know if he's gay. He has a bit of it, but he maybe has a gay experience. This old guy's obsessed with him. Okay, I need some money, and then so I would think that this is just a blip in his memory. You know, like, oh yeah, I did that once. Oh yeah, I met that guy. And then this ayahuasca experience probably takes it to another level. And maybe he doesn't even remember Lee that much, but he remembers the trip. And then he uses that as like a entrepreneurial thing where he takes people to the jungle to have ayahuasca because they mentioned something at the end. Remember when he meets Jason Schwartzman? He's like, oh, he took some other guy into the woods. So I don't know. Maybe that's my perception of Allerton's story. Like he doesn't. Lee was just a means to an end, but I don't know.
I definitely perceived him as more self-assured than like a kid just out of college. Because remember, he's propositioned like with money, and he's like, no, I have to think about it. Like I feel like or maybe that was a ploy, but I feel like. Go ahead.
Well, do you remember? I honestly can't quite remember from the novella, but like, wasn't he supposed to have been like in the Navy or something? Some armed forces,
like decoding something.
Oh yeah,
I
don't
know if it's the Enigma machine or something.
Journalist?
Yeah, I think he was supposed to be maybe, but I think he like he's young. He just left the army or something, and then he's a journalist.
Yeah.
Or,
I mean, I feel like it's not the right question to ask. Like, was he queer and was he grappling with it? Because I don't feel like that's what the film cares about. But I do feel like he was open to just having, like, I feel like he enjoyed the sex. He enjoyed like some parts of it. Obviously, he didn't enjoy like the junky parts of like having to accompany this extremely sick person, like those parts of it.
Yeah.
But I feel like when you're young, you kind of just do stuff for the experience. I don't. It's like hustling him.
So this whole film is just Lee just spazzing out, full of emotions, and Allerton is just bro, okay. I don't know, but then the ayahuasca sequence maybe throws a wrench into my theory. Do you know what I mean? Because it does seem like it was a melding of two minds, I guess, where Allerton was as taken with the experience, or maybe this is all through Lee's point of view. So. It's all Lee's perspective.
And afterward, do we see Allerton's reaction? I don't really remember him being that mind blown by it.
He just seemed like a bit perturbed, and he's like, "I'm leaving."
Yeah,
like,
exactly. Yeah, I think it's definitely through the lens of Lee.
Yeah. Side note, I think are we getting close to time? Maybe.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring up one last thing before we talk about the last ending dream sequence thing. I guess we can end off with that. Yeah, I'm really glad you mentioned Wong Kar-wai because I love In the Mood for Love. I think it's a masterpiece. I think it's one of the best films ever made. And I think it accomplished everything that I think Queer was trying to accomplish at the end of this film. The unrequited love, the end, the sadness, the longing. Watch In the Mood for Love, Chase, if you really want to go for this.
Well, before we get to the ending, we should really talk about what Anand's saying, because the real ending is he goes back and dies on the bed. But before we get to that, I do want to talk about Allerton's like beard or like lady friend that he plays chess with. And
that's a red herring. So it's totally a red.
Oh, it's definitely a red herring, but it's the one that comes because the only hint of Lee facing his inner pain that I get from the movie is when he sees that woman chopped up. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
So I want to know how you took that scene, Mike or Anand. Like
it's some Burroughs thing. I'm sure it's some Burroughs.
I don't know. There are psychedelic elements in the book for sure. I don't recall that description being in the book specifically. I don't know what I take. I don't know what I take from it aside from this character is kind of cracking up and he's having these out of body experiences. And there's obviously like this sort of just surrealist element throughout the whole movie where you get these surrealist sequences that I think are supposed to communicate just like.
But there's not throughout the whole movie. There's only that one, right?
There's a couple sprinkled out. Like the end gets surrealist. There's another sequence where like a piece of paper is like going back and forth between the two of them. Then I would say like the chopped up woman is surrealist. There's a few throughout it.
Okay. Yeah, okay, then we can just ignore it. But I mean, she has like,
No, it plays into the dream sequences. Let's
I mean,
talk a
yes.
little bit about the ending dream sequence. He's looking through this motel room, which is a
Oh,
miniature.
right.
He goes
I
inside.
forgot about that.
Yeah, then he goes inside the hotel room. Then he opens the door. And then he finds Allerton. And then Allerton has either an apple or shot glass on his head. William Tell sequence. He
Oh,
shoots Allerton in the
right.
head. And then we have the snake eating itself
Oh,
thing.
right.
And then we have
Oh.
the millipede,
And
the
then I was like,
constant millipede.
Ronan, are we in a cult now? Did we just watch like the propaganda? Did we just join a cult without knowing? Like,
And
I feel like we just joined the Illuminati.
and to be really honest with you, like I feel like all of these symbolisms are probably really facile. I mean, if you think about the writer, he's like, oh, we're gonna have a snake eating itself. It's like the infinity and life and cycle and death. You
Yeah,
know, that's my perception. It's like
yeah.
very vapid, but I don't know, maybe it's very deep.
Well,
Deep
now
I
that's
don't.
how
like
Burroughs' wife died. So now now there is a connection to the wife. I didn't remember
No,
that.
which is
totally,
just
totally. That
yeah.
that was definitely reference to that. Also, earlier in the movie, when he's super loaded and goes to the party and collapses, someone is doing that with a toy, with like a dart gun, is shooting a thing with something with a dart gun.
So see, we have to know things to get
Yeah.
that.
Did
There's no
you,
way.
Mike, did you ever see 2001? Did you? 2001: A Space Odyssey?
I've
That
seen
end
like a little bit of the open. I haven't seen the whole thing.
yeah, that the end sequence felt a lot like the end of 2001. So like the guy lying in the bed and blah blah blah. I don't know.
I totally
I'm
blocked
gonna,
that drink out of my mind.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
I don't know. I actually would be curious if you guys have any theories. I don't know, aside from the clear reference to like the accidental killing of his wife. I don't know what all those symbols at the end mean. Like I was really, because I rewatched it last night, and I
Wow.
was like, afterwards, I was like, what the hell did the Ouroboros, like the snake eating itself, mean? Like I honestly have no idea. But all that said, I just thought it was a cool looking sequence, and I think I like surrealism, so I was just into it.
Yeah,
I
you
think
should get into it.
around that time where I was watching the sequence, I told Lillian, I feel like I'm just not smart enough to understand this film. And she got this reaction. And what did you say?
No, the emperor has no clothes.
Yes,
Like
yeah.
you are
Yeah,
smart
yeah.
enough. Smart enough. We are
Yeah,
above
yeah.
the average audience member. Like if
No,
we
totally.
don't get it, we failed.
No, totally, man. I don't think like I said, I like this movie, but I don't think it's like has like unplumbed, incredibly intricate depths. You know, like I think there's some cool symbolism. There's some cool stuff going on thematically, but like I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's cool because on this podcast, we're not just like trying to determine whether it was good or not. It's like what resonated with you, where are the good points, what frustrated you. And I feel
Yeah.
like as someone who has often read books after having seen the movie or reads a book in anticipation of a movie, if I'd come into this with that, like as a Burroughs fan and seen this, I think I would have been very, very happy, like very pleased with how. So maybe that's what Luca Guadagnino was trying to do is like really embody that that ethos and like the Burroughs way. But I think like out of the three of us, you're the closest to being a fan of Burroughs.
Like,
Yeah.
Mike.
I don't know if you've seen Raging Bull, but Raging Bull was
Yeah.
like a tough movie for me because like it's a really despicable character.
Mm.
But then I felt for him. I felt bad for him, and my heart went out to him. This character, I really don't care
So
about.
that's my question.
the
At the
thing.
end, did you guys feel sad at the end where he
I-
dies on the bed? And I do feel like that was one emotional beat for me is when he's earlier in the movie when he's in bed with Allerton, he's cold and Allerton, I think he's cold. Anyway, Allerton hooks his foot over
Yeah.
his foot.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
could feel that, like I felt that, like that's a very
Yeah,
touching,
yeah,
like move.
Yeah.
And then the movie ends with him doing that with like a ghost of Allerton, and then he died. I
Yeah.
feel like he
Yeah.
died. Yeah.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
that? I think it moved Anna. Did it move you, Mike?
No, it did. I would say. By the way, I agree. This character is like a piece of shit, and
No,
you know
but
what
my
I
point
mean?
is, it doesn't matter if he's a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah.
that they didn't do enough to make me feel for him. In my opinion, that's
Or relate to
I
him.
was moved because it was like it's like to me it's like it's a story about this guy who whatever you think about him is suffering deeply. You know, he's
Yeah.
in the gutter. It isn't even really a love story per se, right? Like we've talked about. But the two moments that really touched me, one were in Keto on the bed when he's like, yeah, he's cold, he's going through withdrawal from heroin, and he's just you get this. It's like the only time his facade ever really cracks, is he
Yeah.
says to Allerton, like, you like it sometimes, don't you? And it's just
Yeah.
so desperate, sad,
Yeah,
and
that was,
needy. And that got me. And then at the end, just the idea that this guy, he's dying in the bed, he's elderly, and you kind of have to assume the rest of his life didn't go any better than the previous part.
yes.
No,
Yeah.
And
like he was
just
into
the
this.
idea, yeah, like just the idea that he had this one thing in his life. He has such a sad life, but he had this one thing in his
Yeah.
life where it brought him some measure of like comfort and happiness. As messed up as it was, that did kind of touch me.
Yeah.
I think
I
I
would
know.
dispute the words comfort and happiness,
Yeah.
but I do want to point out that particular scene where he's really pathetically yelling at Allerton in Quito, and Allerton's just keeping quiet. Like I don't know if you remember that scene.
Yeah, I
Where,
remember.
yeah, I thought that was great because I was so embarrassed for him.
Disgusting.
Yeah.
I was so
Yeah.
embarrassed, and I was like, "This is a good scene."
Yeah. Well, at least I felt something, but I think I don't really
At least I felt
empathize with neediness. Like it's not something I like
Yeah.
value or I think I'm the kind of person when I see neediness on screen, I'm like, you're pathetic. Like
There were two things. Number one, when I was watching the end scene was, I was like, guys, ease up on the number of nuclear reactors that you can see from the window. I know it's the future. Chill out, guys. All right, you don't need to do this. There are like 5 cooling towers. I was like,
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, I was like, how did this guy survive to this age? I know William Burroughs lived a long life, but how? He's been putting everything into his veins and in his his gullet. What is happening? I don't know. But yeah, I guess did we cover everything? Is there any more questions?
I think so. I had a couple other little ones, but nothing major. I think those were all my main ones.
I think we can knock them out. We got like maybe 5 minutes.
Or is there anything you want to ask? Yeah. Let me think.
The only other thing I have in here actually that was interesting is this is just something that occurred to me when watching it. Is this is more meta commentary about like social views on art and who gets to make movies and act and stuff. But like, it was interesting to me that this is a movie. You know, there's been a popular discussion around like who gets to play what part.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah. Like
you had 2 straight men playing gay characters in this. You also had Jason Schwartzman straight. He's playing a gay character too. They put him in a fat suit too. So that was just
gain the weight. No.
Yeah, how would you know? Well, yeah, this is Anand hinted at it throughout the whole podcast, but his physical transformation is epic as a character. But now maybe it's a fat suit. But go ahead.
I don't know for sure. I assume it's the fat suit.
Who knows?
Anyway, I'm not saying any of these things bothered me, but I just thought it was interesting that the production team and Luca and everyone was fine with it.
Yeah, it is really interesting because I remember the discourse. I'm very like into the discourse, which is kind of bad. But after Challengers, everyone was like begging for like, just give us a movie about gay men, Luca. Like, I mean, Call Me by Your Name.
That was a big movie about gay men, right? Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, I just said so. Call Me by Your Name, but it's like all of Challengers is like, Zendaya was just kind of like the odd one out. Like, I don't know. So I feel like there was a lot of discourse about how the next thing should be more like Call Me by Your Name and like just the full gayness and queerness of Luca. And as we've discussed, that's not what the movie's about. So it's not something that crossed my mind. And I feel like if it had been more about like the queer identity and like coming of age as a gay man and like what that meant, then I maybe would have like triggered my woke radar, which I feel like I have a pretty good like problematic radar, but it didn't even occur to me. And so that to me is proof that it was not about the gay experience,
Maybe I'm wrong, but like I think before Call Me by Your Name, I never thought of Luca as like a gay director because I was a fan for a long time. Like I saw I Am Love and there was one he did called By the Swimming Pool. I can't remember the name, but it was very good. Also Suspiria, he did a Suspiria remake, and none of them had very overtly gay themes. So when he started adding more gay stuff into it, I'm like, oh, so now he's really leaning into it. I didn't know it was a zeitgeist where he's like the gay director, make more gay.
No. That's not what I was trying to say. I was trying to say people were saying Challengers was so sexy. Why is there this? I have to turn this
I think
off.
just keep it in.
I think people were like, oh, Challengers was so sexy. Like, let's see it with the men, like next. Like, I don't think they were trying to like pigeonhole Luca or call him a gay director, but I think there was like a lot of thirst after Challengers to see something, which honestly he delivered. Like the sex scenes were very graphic and queer.
I didn't see Challengers. Maybe I should see it.
I would love to know what you think about Challengers.
I-
I feel like most people around me didn't like it, but the more I think about it, the more I love it. Like it's really going up
It's
in
fun
my rankings.
because it's like a very non-linear story, so it's fun to watch. But
Mm.
I wasn't too taken with it as much as everybody else. But the soundtrack is
No, I
really
think
wonderful.
most people were not that taken with it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really identified to the character of like an ambitious woman, and like I love the dynamic of the love triangle. But if you watch it, we can talk about it later.
My issue is that it was a very sexless sex thriller film.
What? It was so sexy.
No, but there was no sex in it. It
There
was
was
like
sex in it.
very like. Have you seen the '80s sex films? It's like
Yeah,
there's-
but you can. This is the whole thing about suspense. You don't show it. You hint at it, and that's more effective. That's your whole thing about the dog.
yeah, no, but it just there was like nothing. Anyways,
Anyway,
Yeah.
that's
we can talk about a different conversation.
Yeah. Do you guys think Luca thinks this is a story about queerness?
Great question. I
Wait, sorry.
love that
Repeat the question. Luca thinks.
Do you think Luca thinks this is a story about queerness? Like, why
I
did
think
he want to make this movie?
It's
so much?
about love. I think that's what he thinks. He thinks this is a story about unrequited
Because
love.
I read an interview with him where he says he read it when he was 17 and is like always wanted to make a movie about it.
Whoa. That's why it's so faithful. It really feels like I really am a fan of directors who truly find work and love it and then make it rather than just are presented with IP and they're like, let's commercialize
Yeah.
this.
Totally,
So I
totally.
really appreciate that. And I think that's so cool. But I love that question, Mike. I don't know the answer.
It sort of feels like, that meme where like people really idolize like Ryan Gosling in Drive. Like, oh, he's literally me. Like he reads all these exploits of this loner who's tormented by his true love. And it's like, that's me. I'm gonna make a movie about that. I don't know. Maybe I'm being very harsh, but that's like what that sounds like. Right. I don't know. What do you think, Mike?
About
Do you think Luca thinks it's a
about the question? I don't know. I wonder. I mean, it's
if he does, then I think he failed and someone should let him
yeah.
know.
I was talking with this with Maya last night actually, and she said that she thought it was about the queer experience. So I don't think it's like an impossible interpretation or something. But if he
Okay.
does think that, my opinion is that he's wrong about the novella. His movie can be whatever he wants. He can,
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I could actually see this film with like an older woman in the place of Daniel Craig instead of a man. I think that would be believable to me.
What do you think about Baby Girl as
It
a
doesn't have to
companion
be a
piece to
queer
it?
thing. It could be a straight.
I really want to see it. Wait, but if we're gonna talk about Baby Girl, let's just end the podcast.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it.
Oh,
so
you haven't
no-
seen Baby
no.
Girl? Oh, okay.
Guys, I have a job now. It's horrible.
I have a job too.
I know. How do you keep? This movies are his main hobby. I feel like I need to like
Yeah.
get rid of all my other hobbies to keep up.
To be fair, it's
Anyway.
Oscar season. We watch more films leading up to
Did you
December.
watch Brutalist already?
Oh, I haven't
Yeah,
seen it.
I've seen Brutalist, yeah.
Yeah, my parents saw it and it was so cute because they were so tickled that there was an intermission. Because
Oh.
they went to
Oh.
the movies when there was intermissions normally. Yeah.
I love the intermission because I'm perfectly happy to watch a 3.5 hour movie, but it is long, so it was cool it felt like an event, and then it was cool to like chat about the first half with my friends I went with, and it was
Yeah.
fun.
Okay. Should we let our viewers go and then we'll
Yeah.
we'll chit chat?
Thank you so much, Mike, for joining us. You can just join. We'll just whatever. We'll see you again. And shout out to your attire this episode. I feel like
Yes.
you're very much embodying the film critic vibe. So appreciate the
Yeah.
effort. Any last thoughts, Mike?
Oh yeah. Would everybody recommend watching Queer? Mike?
I would say so. I liked it. Like I said, I think it has some notable flaws. I don't think it's the best movie ever, but I enjoyed it.
Lillian?
I would recommend it to someone who's like into film. I think I still like honestly, I'm still more net positive. Am I? I don't know. I think yeah.
Okay. So whoever is listening to this, listen to me. Watch In the Mood for Love.
They've already
Okay, that's all you need to watch, man. But no, rewatch it. Don't need to watch Queer. Just watch In the Mood for Love.
For love.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye bye.